All right, welcome everybody to this session of Tech Tuesdays. We're back after a 3-week break in our brand new headquarters here at Informatica. And today we're going to be talking about integration templates. Now, this is a topic that's gained a lot of traction amongst our customers, and there's been a lot of demand for understanding how to use these integration templates. Today we actually have a customer with us, Intralinks, and we have Sanjay Badola from Intralinks who's going to take us through how he built an integration template. Also joining me on the call today is Naresh Govindaraj, our VP of Product Management for Informatica Cloud, as well as Amal Dongre, our Senior Staff Engineer from Informatica Cloud Engineering. And both Amal and Naresh have been with Informatica for over 10 years. On the agenda for today's session, we're first going to go into why people use integration templates. Then we're going to go into the Intralinks customer study and a demo by Sanjay Badola. We're then also going to go into an Informatica Cloud demo with Amal Dongre, where he's going to show you how to import ready-made templates into your own Informatica Cloud account. We're then going to go through a summary of what we learned today in a Q&A session. So jumping right in, let's talk about why most people use integration templates. So for those of you that have used Informatica Cloud, you're very, very familiar with our simple 6-step wizard, whereby you define a certain task, you pick your appropriate sources and targets along with the operation that you wish to perform, your filtering, your drag and drop field mapping, and finally your scheduling. Now, this sort of functionality has a very simple user interface and is very appropriate for software as a service administrators, cloud administrators, and business analysts. But when it comes to some advanced integration use cases, that's where templates become really, really useful and very, very powerful. So what templates allow you to do is, for those of you that are integration developers or enterprise architects or BI architects, it allows you to develop really complex integration workflow, but yet deliver this complex integration workflow to your business stakeholders for them to use within the 6-step wizard that you see above. So with that, let's jump right into Intralinks and let's go into the case study. So essentially, Intralinks needed to access a lot of invoice objects from Zuora, and they needed to integrate that with Great Plains. And the data there needs to be combined with a lot of legacy SQL Server stored procedures. And it was for this purpose that Sanjay Badola from Intralinks developed a template. Here's a screenshot of the template that he developed, and later on I will be handing controls over to him so that he can take us through how he actually built this particular template. So as you can see, here are the various invoiced items with several joiner and filter conditions and eventually integrating with Great Plains. So a little bit about Intralinks. Intralinks is headquartered on the East Coast, and they have almost 100,000 customers, and they are a very well-known leader in enterprise collaboration. In fact, Gartner ranked them #1 in the enterprise collaboration and social software suites market share for the year ended 2012. So we're very, very happy to have Intralinks actually use our templates for a very complex integration use case. Now, Sanjay Badola from Intralinks is a senior developer there, and he's had several years of Java and J2EE experience. And he is in charge of integrating SaaS systems such as Salesforce, Zuora, and others with the rest of the enterprise applications that reside behind the firewall. Intralinks actually started using Informatica Cloud about a year ago. So with that, I'm now going to hand control over to Sanjay Badola of Intralinks.
So we have this various objects in Zuora environment which we wanted to pull basically the multiple objects and push them towards our SQL Server database. And from then onwards, we were having a SQL stored procedure that was pushing it to the Great Plains database. So, so this was the business scenario we had, and we used the template for basically supporting the multiple objects. So if you see over here, uh, for the invoice, we just created uh, the source definition for the invoice. The database type is Zuora, and the source table is invoice. We wanted the object name to be invoice itself. Uh, Then for the invoice item, it is the same way. The database type is Zuora, and the source table is invoice item. So basically what it means is that the invoice item object within the Zuora database, we are trying to extract that information. Then what we wanted some of the elements from the invoice object and some of the elements from the invoice item objects. So here we did whatever fields we wanted from the invoice object. We just mentioned it over here and passed it from the from element and the to element mapping it over here. So we have ID, account ID, status, invoice numbers, transfer to finance flag, and the invoice date. Similarly, we wanted all the fields from the invoice item coming towards our SQL Server database. These are the source qualifier we used. So basically, here there's nothing, everything is default, so I just gave the transformation name as ASQ invoice, and similarly for the invoice item, the transformation name is ASQ invoice item. Rest everything is by default, like so, nothing changes here. So in the rule 3 here, what we did was we wanted to give a pattern to whatever the fields were coming from the invoice. So we made it as underscore invoice. So all those fields name which are coming from invoice will be having an underscore invoice appended to it. Similarly, for all the fields that are coming from invoice item will be having underscore invoice item appended to it. This is for easier reading, and later on we can easily use those fields name when we are mapping it to the output. Since we are using multiple objects over here, we wanted to use the joiner condition. So everything is default here except for this join condition, where we have mentioned $condition $. This will be this condition will be giving it later on when we are creating the template from the Informatica Cloud environment. So so this gives us that flexibility to give any parameter condition using this $sign. Similarly, the filter condition of we wanted to specify some filter condition, but and this is the way we gave it over here. So $filter $, and this is again the condition which we'll be mentioning it later on when we are creating the actual template in the Informatica Cloud environment. The rest is mostly then whatever fields, whatever fields we are getting from invoice and invoice item, we are mapping it to the output. And here we are doing actual configuration for the out field and the invoice and invoice item field coming over here. So if you can see, ID underscore invoice item is mapped to ID underscore out, and similarly ID underscore invoice is mapped to invoice ID underscore out. So similarly, we have all those fields coming from both the objects and then mapped to the out objects. And then the final mapping to our SQL Server database. The out fields are mapped to the field name which exists in the table. So the ID underscore out is mapped to ID field, invoice ID underscore out is mapped to invoice ID, and similarly for all other field is done. So this is the way we have we created the template, and then we published the template. So once you publish it, you will be creating an integration template. So within the integration, so in the Informatica Cloud, if you want to create a template, you can just go give a template name and then select the template or whatever. You can browse for the template, which will be stored as an XML file. So this is already done for my case. So I'll just show you that particular template. So this is the one which we created, Zuora Invoice 4.2. So here you can see we have mentioned the source for the $invoice as master, and the $invoice item source label is detail, and we have given the default properties also, like default equal to invoice and default equal to invoice item, so that when we are creating the actual template, custom template, that time we don't have to mention these things. It just keeps it as default. And similarly for the condition, we are given param type equal to condition and the filter as param type equal to expression. So once you create this integration template and map your integration template to Zuora invoice 41.xml, that is the XML file which I created from the VSD file. Once you have that, then you can go to your custom integration and you can create your custom ZGP, like I've given the name as custom ZGP invoice feed with 2.2. It can be anything, but this is where it is using the template which we just created, that is Zuora invoice 4.2. So I'll just show you the way it was created. It's just a 4-step process. So if you 5-step process maybe. So in the first name, it's the task name what you gave over here, and then the integration template you just created in the previous screen. So you can select that particular previous template from your Zuora invoice, and it's the same thing. And then you can go to the source. So in the source, we have already defaulted it to invoice and invoice item. So you can see this comes automatically, and since we had already mentioned Zuora as the source, so even that got populated automatically. Then in the target, we wanted the SQL Server database, so we mentioned the database type as well as the source connection to it. So we give the connection name as GP staging and the target object where we want to push the data. And then the parameters. So here you can see the join condition we have. So we wanted to join the two objects, invoice and invoice as item, and this is how we can use that, like ID underscore invoice equal to invoice ID underscore invoice item. So remember, these are the same patterns which we had given in the template file. So this is the join condition, and also you can mention your expression. So we wanted to get all those invoices that were in the posted state and where the transfer to accounting, transfer to finance flag was set to no. So we are only pulling those data where the invoice is posted and transfer to finance flag is no. Later on, what we do is once this task runs, we are updating the transfer to finance flag to yes. So that way we are we are getting only delta records that for which the transfer to finance flag is no. And then the schedule when we want to run it. So this is not right now scheduled, but we have another task scheduler from where it runs. So this is the way we have created a template, and we use it within our task flow for one other task. So if you see ZG invoice, we have this. So within the task flow, we are using that particular. Sorry, not this one. It is this one. Yeah. So here you can see we have mentioned this particular task, which is one among the many tasks we want to do within a task flow. So with that, I'll give it back to Ashwin.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Sanjay, for a great demo and showing your actual use case. So we just finished a demo by Sanjay Badola of Intralinks, and he took us through a case study of integrating multiple invoice items from Zuora with some legacy stored procedures in SQL Server, which eventually needed to be put into Great Plains. So now we're actually going to have a demo by Amal Dongre from Informatica Cloud Engineering, and what he's going to take us through are a couple of really popular templates that have been requested by our customers. He's going to show how you can import these templates into your own Informatica Cloud account.
Hi everybody, good morning. You should be able to see a list of templates we have on Informatica Cloud screen in front. Ashwin, are you able to see it? Yeah, okay.
We're able to see it.
So this is actually a shared org that we have on Informatica Cloud where we have a few templates, and we will be adding more and more in the coming days. I have Naresh also with me here. Naresh, do you want to just add some thoughts about what?
Sure. So the idea is that as we worked with different customers and looked at different use cases for integration, we found that there are certain patterns. And what we've done is that taken some of the common integration patterns and wrapped them into integration templates. And we've created the central org in Informatica Cloud where we've stored these templates so you as customers can easily access them, bring them into your own org and use it. So that's the idea. So we plan to add more templates in here, and in a future session we'll show how you can create these templates as well on your own. So in this session, of course, Amol will walk us through a couple of examples here to see how you can leverage them.
Thanks, Paresh. So for now, we have these templates here, and you can see more here in future. What we can do right now is walk through a couple of these and then even try one of those. So, for example, in recent times, we have seen a lot of requirements where people want to pivot data. It's either normalization or denormalization, where they get data from input files, where each row contains a role or any row level information for a product or a customer or an opportunity, and they want that to be pivoted to values in a single column or at least in a single row. Now this is one example where you have a customer ID and then there are comments. What you see here is just sample data, and in the output you are pivoting that data into one row per customer ID so that you can concatenate all the individual comments into a single column. And one good example of that is how you want to add roles for a user in Salesforce. For that, this is very useful, this kind of a template. So this is one example, and we can actually try this out. Now in this template, it predefines some of the parameters. So one of the parameters is, for example, the source column to be pivoted. That's the one that we want to actually concatenate from individual row values into a single column. Then the ID of the source key, which is the customer ID in this case, and the sequence number, which is the one that we use to get the count or something like that. It can also let you do a field map. One of the things that I wanted to highlight was in the example Sanjay showed us, he had a specific requirement where he knew how the fields from the source map to the target. So he configured the template using his knowledge of the field map that was there already. In some cases, you may have a situation where you want to expose that field map itself to your users and let them map the fields. If you want to do that, we have a way to do that as well. So you could expose some parameter as a field map as described here, and we can take a look at it in a moment. What that will do is it will allow the person who is creating the task to configure the field map. So that was one example. We have several other examples like Salesforce data routing, for example, which lets you configure multiple targets, which you cannot do today in a standard data synchronization task, or even aggregate data. So there is this other template which lets you aggregate data from Salesforce or any other. I mean, the example here is for Salesforce, but you could do this over any application or any system or any flat file that Informatica supports. So all the major relational database applications, relational database systems, or flat files, or Salesforce, or any application that is supported on Informatica Cloud in general. You could do this for any of them. So let me log out from here, and I will log in my own Informatica account so we can take a look at how you can use these templates in your own org. So what I will do is I'll go to administration, and there is this option called migrate objects. What I want to do is I want to access this particular org that we talked about, the shared org, and get some objects from there into my own org. So this is an administration migrate objects option, and within that I'll actually start the migration wizard, which will ask me to log in to the shared org, and anybody who wants to get these objects from the shared org can have the credentials from us and access that. So when I click on that, now I have logged on into the org from where I want to get my objects, and let me do the add objects. Let me click on the add objects button to get those. So it opens this dialog where I can see what types of objects I can import or migrate from the shared org into my own. And in this case, we will choose integration templates. And as you can see here, it will show the template that we had listed there. So let me choose the one that I want to show here. So which is pivot rows into delimited column, and possibly I could also do Salesforce aggregator if time permits. And I will add it here. And once I click OK, it will show it. And then when I click OK here, it will actually migrate it to my own org. So now, once the migration completes, I will have these templates available in my for my login. So let's give it a second here to do it. And while that is doing, I just wanted to stress upon the fact that every such template that becomes available there, once you import it, you can configure it here the way Sanjay described there. So let me go back now. So now once the migration has been completed, I can go to integration templates in configuration, and let me expand this because I work on a lot of them. So these are the two templates that we just imported: pivot rows to delimited column and the Salesforce aggregator. And let me quickly open the pivot template. You can see it entirely here, and you could also go and edit some of the things in the template parameters and some of the definitions that we have here. Now, in your case, if your source table is going to be a Salesforce table or a Salesforce object, you could restrict this connection default property to Salesforce, or you could even use the name of the connection itself here. If it is a flat file, you could do that as well here. So you can edit some of these default properties of the template based on how it suits you. Now let's actually create a task for this template. For that, you need to click on this new custom integration task button, and it will open the task creation wizard, and that's where the integration with the 6-step or the standard wizard here happens. Once you have defined the template, you can use that template as a reference and then run through a very similar configuration task wizard, custom integration task wizard, which will look very similar to the standard data synchronization task wizard. And let me create a task here. I'll choose my agent, and now this will be driven by how the template has been configured. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read data from my file. Let me just log on back to this environment I have. So I have a role data. So for example, I have a user ID, a sequence number, and the role name. And what I want to do is I want to concatenate these roles for the same user into a single row, so I can then load them into Salesforce. In this particular example, what I will do is I'll just use a flat file, but you could also use Salesforce in this case. So I'll use my flat file connection, and I will access that file on the input. I name the file so that it shows up on top here, and you can see that the preview and all that, it works very similar to how it works in a standard data synchronization task. Now in this case, I could also load it into Salesforce, but for now let me just use a flat file just to demonstrate how it can pivot it. Now in this case, what we expect it to do is concatenate that data into a single row for a customer. So the column we are trying to pivot is the role name, and there is some help available here. So you can configure all of this. The help text that shows up there, as it's saying here, select the source column that needs to be pivoted. It's all custom descriptions that we have configured with the templates. So this is the column that I need pivoting, and the second one is the ID of the source row. So that's my user ID, and the third one is the number, which is the num column. And in this case, it will expose the field map, because we had defined the field map control as the parameter as a field map control. Now in this case, I want the result, the pivoted row result, into this, and my intern ID is my input ID. I can validate that everything I have configured is fine. And I could go to the next tab, but that's very similar to the data synchronization. So let me just, in the interest of time, save this task and run. So when it runs, it will actually take the data. Internally, it uses an aggregator to concatenate the data into single row, or in fact, in this case, it concatenates into a single column value. And once the task is done, we can go here and see how it actually pivots it. Let me expand this. So using this, it has done that the pivoting activity here. So this was just one example, and there are various such templates we could use, just like I explained here.
So let's go into some summary of what we've learned, and then we're going to go into Q&A. So basically, if you want to try out some of the templates that Amal showed in the shared master org, please do contact us for access information to that shared org, and you can use the Migrate Objects feature to migrate over whatever templates you desire into your own Informatica Cloud account. And as far as when to use templates, basically you would use templates whenever you have to have use cases that go beyond standard data synchronization. So if you have multiple sources, multiple targets, and complex joiner conditions or filter conditions, that's when you would use templates. And for those of you that want to build application templates similar to what Sanjay built, so for example, let's say you want to build a Salesforce Zuora template, or if you want to build a Great Plains to Salesforce template or something like that, you would need to download the respective connector first. So within your Informatica Cloud account, go under Administration, click on Connectors, and then enable whatever connector you wish to try out to build your application template. So with that, we're going to go into Q&A, and one of the questions we have, this is probably one for Naresh. The question is around complex mathematical transformations involved in the financial services industries. So will Informatica Cloud's templates be able to handle these sorts of use cases?
Okay, so as you know, and based on the demo that we saw today, is that what templates brings forth is access to the various transformations that are not available through the data synchronization task, right? So it's you have access to all the transformations that were only accessible in PowerCenter. So with that, you have the aggregators, the joiners, the normalizer, the union, etc., and it allows you to handle more complex use cases. So in addition to that, of course, our expression transformation has a library of functions that are available, and that's available even in the data synchronization task. And you have access to some of the statistical functions and other mathematical functions. Okay, and if you want to go beyond that, you can bring in other functions as well through Java and so forth, and bring that in through a template.
Okay, excellent. The other question we have, this is probably one for Sanjay, it's specific to the Zuora template. How did you decide on what aspects of the template to parameterize? So Sanjay, if you could add some color around that.
So sorry, can you repeat that, please, Ashwin?
Sure. So the question here is around your Zuora templates when you define your various parameters.
Right.
So I guess the question is, how would you decide what aspects of the templates to parameterize when you're building a template?
So in our case, we wanted the joiner condition and the filter condition as parameterized because till last moment we were playing around with it and we didn't know what will be the actual parameter that will be passed to it. So we wanted these two conditions, the join condition and the filter conditions, to be parameterized. But I think then based on these two criteria only, we were looking at it so. If that answers your questions.
So and just to add to that, I mean, what the parameterization feature is very is flexible and powerful because you can, oftentimes when you're building a process, you will realize that there are certain aspects, certain rules, such as filters and so forth. You don't know what that is ahead of time. Okay, so what this allows you is to parameterize them so that a user, when they actually want to execute a particular process, they can provide the values for those parameters. Okay, so this also allows the template developers to focus on the actual integration process, whereas the end users who are more familiar with the data to provide the right rules before the execution. Okay, so it gives that flexibility.
Okay, great. So we have 3 more questions in the chat panel, but we'll only have time for one since we're a little bit over time. So this question is probably more for Amal and Naresh. What are some of the more popular use cases for templates?
So so there are lots of use cases for templates, and we saw some of them in the shared org that you will have access to. And I would say that there are some use cases that has to deal with a particular application. So let's say it's Salesforce. So it's anything to do with how we want to get data out of Salesforce or into Salesforce. If there are certain patterns, a common use case is being able to pivot information before it goes into Salesforce. So that's something you can build as a template and then use in that context. Similarly, there's aggregation. There are also cases where you want to, let's say, route information based on certain conditions. Like, let's say you want to capture error records in accounts in Salesforce. So you can set up a template that actually deals with the errors and writes the faulty accounts into a separate location, things like that. There are also other types of templates that are just generic templates, like if you want to format dates in a particular way in a text file, right? I mean, you have dates of a particular format, you want to change the format, so you can create a template for that. Or let's say you want to replace all occurrences of a certain string to some other string value. So these are types of things, that you can do. It's very flexible, and I mean, since it has all the access to all the mapping capability in Power Center, I mean, there's really there's no limit to what you can build in using this.
Yeah, and this is Amol again. I just want to add a few examples to that also. We have also seen people wanting to process data from list of files, a set of files which are of the same structure. So instead of one file, you want to process a bunch of files, or when you are running a task, you want to append to an existing file and things like that. So there are some ways to tweak templates or configure templates to do that also. So that's another common scenario we have seen in general. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So thanks for the Q&A session, everyone. Just a couple of next steps. So for those of you that saw Amal's template demo and you saw the list of templates that you'd like to push from the shared master org into your own Informatica Cloud account, please contact us and we'll give you the information necessary to enable you with that. For those of you that are already part of the community and want to build more templates, please join the developer community at informaticacloud.com/developers. It actually redirects to our main community site. We will actually also be having another Tech Tuesday session on templates. This time it will be focused on building templates from scratch. That will be on October the 1st. And as for next week's Tech Tuesday session, it's going to be on cloud migration and using sandboxes. So thank you all for joining us for this edition of Tech Tuesdays. Thank you to Sanjay Badola of Intralinks for sharing his template use case with us. And I will put up the recording of this session up on the communities along with the email that you can email to if you want access to the shared master org. Thanks for everyone for joining us for this edition of Tech Tuesdays. See you next week.